Okay, so I want to welcome everyone for joining us tonight for another session of Philly Talks Trash. I wanted to start just by letting you know that tonight's session is being recorded. We can move to the next slide. It has been so exciting to see people engaged month after month on such a wide range of topics that all connect back to these simple ideas of reducing waste, replacing our throwaway culture with ones that embrace circular processes, and finding ways to help slow climate change. Philly Talks Trash is a joint venture between the Plastics Reduction Task Force of Weaver's Way and Philadelphia Neighborhood Networks. Through different avenues, both of our groups are focused on ways to make the Philadelphia region more sustainable. Over the last few months, we have looked at a wide array of topics to help provide more context to the waste problem in our region, and also to help equip you with individual and community level actions that you can take. Far too often, though, the conversation around environmental sustainability focuses on the communities that we all live in, and not the ones that are the most impacted, which are primarily low-income communities of color. I remember growing up and being an avid recycler. I don't know about all of you, but I was very focused on getting the right containers into the right bins. And a few years ago, I watched a news segment about plastic recycling and was in shock to learn that the plastic I thought was going to a recycling facility nearby was actually ending up in other countries, often polluting coastlines and neighborhoods. And then I was even more astounded to learn that this was actually happening right here at home, in places like what is called Cancer Alley in Louisiana, and right outside of Philadelphia in the city of Chester. When we put our trash, and many times our recycling too, on the corner to be picked up, we all need to be more aware of where it's going. The US generates more plastic waste than any other country, and our total waste has gone up to an average of around 4.5 pounds per person per day. While a small percentage of this gets recycled and some goes to the landfill, the US sends almost 12% of our waste to incinerators. And while some support incineration because it can produce energy, the impacts of this process on neighboring communities are immense. While we don't see it, low-income communities of color are having to deal with the ash residue and other toxic chemicals from waste incineration on a daily basis. Today, if we can move to the next slide. Today, we're going to hear from 3 activists who have been fighting to bring more awareness to the adverse impacts of pollution-creating facilities like incinerators, chemical plants, and toxic waste sites, and to create a more environmentally just future for those communities on the front lines. Once we hear from each of our speakers and panelists, we will have plenty of time for questions and discussion. So I want to invite everyone on the call tonight to please put your questions in the chat as we move forward, and we'll make sure to get to them right after the presentations are over. Next slide. First, tonight, I would like to introduce you all to Mike Ewell, the founder and director of Energy Justice Network, a national network of community groups that are fighting for a transformation to clean energy and zero waste that is equitable and community owned. The organization was founded in 1999 to support grassroots efforts trying to stop dirty energy focused on gas, coal, and waste incineration. Mike and others have worked on shutting down facilities in Delaware, Montgomery, Camden, and Bucks counties, and have written and passed clean air laws in multiple states. They are collaborating with multiple organizations to pass environmental justice legislation and put the spotlight on the situation in Chester. Mike, I'd like to hand it over to you to tell us more if you can.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm going to get my screen shared here so we can get started. Okay, is that showing up right?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. So I'm not going to be able to see questions as they're posted. So if there's anything that is burning and should be said during the presentation, someone vocalize it. But otherwise, I think we'll be taking those at the end. Hi everyone, my name is Mike Ewell, with an A, with Energy Justice Network. I live in Oxford Circle in Northeast Philadelphia, and I've been working with communities across the country to stop dirty energy and waste facilities of all sorts. So here's a map on a mapping project, one of them that we have, that shows where the trash incinerators are in the US. And you'll see there's a bit of a trend. We're in the middle of actually the worst cluster of trash incinerators in the whole country are the 5 that circle Philadelphia. The one in Chester is the largest in the country with the fewest pollution controls. And the one in Camden, very close to South and Central Philadelphia, is the second largest emitter of toxic lead in the whole industry of all these facilities. So we've got a lot of reasons to be concerned, and some of them overlap with the demographics and health problems that we have in the city. So you'll see we're the poorest large city in the country, and we have one of the worst asthma capitals in the nation. We were ranked number 4 twice and number 7 most recently as one of the worst asthma capitals by the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America. And the American Lung Association also ranked Philadelphia, and every year basically ranks us an F score in terms of ground level ozone that contributes to the asthma attacks that are caused by the nitrogen oxides emitted from trash incinerators plus other sources. We're also possibly still a top city in terms of cancer incidence. About 10, 15 years ago, we were number 1 of all the big cities. I couldn't find more recent data than this easily, but hopefully this is going down, and probably the fact that our oil refinery blew up and closed down a few years ago is making this less of a problem. But we know from other studies of incinerators that people living around trash incinerators have higher rates of cancers in general, including many specific ones, and also higher amounts of respiratory problems, heart conditions, and other things that are caused by the pollutants that incinerators release. Now, our trash, currently 40% of it is going to incinerators. The biggest source or destination of those is the one in Chester, which is Covanta, Delaware Valley, and that's the second largest recipient of Philadelphia's trash. This is what it looks like. You can see it's very close to homes, unlike a lot of other industrial facilities, whether they're landfills, incinerators, or other types of things. They're usually not right across the railroad tracks from residents. There are examples of that, but Chester is a very glaring case of where you see this along the waterfront. It's just another picture of that facility. And Covanta's incinerator there is the #1 air polluter in the city of Chester. They're kind of tied for number 1 or 2 with the oil refinery right next door in Trainer. And they're one of the top air polluters in the whole 7-county Philadelphia area. All 5 of those incinerators that you saw circling Philadelphia are among the region's top 8 air polluters in like Philadelphia and the 6 counties surrounding it. And I won't go through this in detail, but you can see within Delaware County, they're either the first or second largest air polluter for all these different pollutants. And they cause a wide range of health effects. So don't need to read through them all, but it causes a lot of things that are usually respiratory cancers, but also birth defects, learning disabilities, all sorts of problems. They're also the largest environmental violator in the city of Chester. Ever since Covanta took the plant over in June 2005 from a previous owner, they have racked up 320 violations, which is exactly twice as many as the second worst environmental violator in the city. Now, there's a thriving movement, and you'll be hearing from Elaine as well, and Eileen. We're all together in fighting Covanta and fighting this whole system that's propping up this industry. And at Energy Justice Network, where we're concerned not just about the Covanta plant in Chester, but the other ones surrounding Philadelphia, because we know that when they close, and they're likely to close sooner than the one in Chester, then the waste contracts that prop them up are going to cause that waste to flow to Chester once we succeed, which we're on the path to doing right now. We're doing a very good job of a thriving campaign that is turning around Delaware County and getting Delaware County to get to a position that within a year, probably, they will pull out all of their trash from that incinerator, which will leave about 1/3 of their capacity open for other places to send waste. So we can't win just by tackling this one facility without also fighting Philadelphia's waste contract and other ones that are propping up incinerators in our whole region. Now, the waste that's burned there, only a little under 2% is from Chester City residents. About another 30% is the rest of Delaware County. So that's all collectively, all that waste we expect to be able to cut off in hopefully about a year's time. And then another 31% is from Philadelphia. And so this is the contract we're going to be focusing on in Philly. And then eventually we'll get back to fighting Ocean City and New York when their contracts come back up. So in 2019, we had 41 groups that signed on opposing the contracts that we're currently in Philadelphia, particularly the one with Covanta that has all that waste being burned, but also urging that they don't allow waste to be burned even through their other contracts, like the one with Waste Management, which I'll explain in a bit. Now, those contracts were signed, there are two of them. One is Covanta, which is a third of Philly's trash, and the Waste Management one is 2/3 of Philly's trash. Some of Waste Management stuff also goes to incinerators, but basically all of Covanta's does. And both of those contracts are 4 years long with 3 one-year renewal options, just like the structure of the previous contract that we fought in 2012. And that means that the first option we have to stop it from being renewed is about a year from now. And then we'll get 2 more options each year after that. So I am part of an advisory committee for Catherine Gilmore Richardson, the chair of the Environmental Committee in Philadelphia City Council. And as part of that, I wrote a law, or not a law yet, a bill called the Waste Contracting for Clean Air Act, which we're still hoping to get introduced. It's been slow moving with her office, so we're hoping to get some help getting other council members to champion this. And this would make it illegal for Philadelphia to ever contract or renew any existing contracts to burn Philly's trash, recyclables, or compostables. So let's talk a little bit for why incineration is a bad thing in the first place, because this might be new to some of you. So first of all, trash incineration is worse than coal burning. We've compared EPA data, other data, and found that if they were the same size facility, in other words, producing the same amount of energy, you get many times more of pretty much every pollutant that there's data on compared to if you were burning coal in the same plant. And we all know that coal is filthy as hell. It's the dirtiest fuel by many measures, but most don't know, even on climate measures, that burning trash is even dirtier than coal. On climate specifically, it's about 2.5 times as bad as coal. And this is EPA data in this graph demonstrating that. So how do they compare to landfills? Incinerators are also worse than landfills, but they don't avoid landfills. You just end up with smaller, more toxic landfills because the ash goes somewhere. For every 100 tons of trash you burn, you have close to 30 tons of toxic ash that still have to get dumped. And that still goes to Pennsylvania landfills and is just more dangerous to the groundwater, to those breathing the ash that can blow off of the landfill or the trucks. So the real answer is basically do the zero waste scheme, which we'll talk about in a second, but minimize landfilling by getting incineration out of the picture because it's so much more dangerous for the landfill community and to all of us that breathe the air around incinerator communities. This is from a study I did in Maryland, where they have Montgomery County, Maryland, just like we have Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Both of them have Covanta incinerators that are the largest air polluters in their counties. And in Montgomery County, Maryland, their county executive, in response to this report we put together, decided that they're going to close their incinerator because they own it. It's a county-owned one in that case. And they're going to close it within 12 to 18 months, which is now close to 12 months because they said that in December. And this study showed that incineration, even if you have to compare it to trucking hundreds of miles to get to a landfill, is more than twice as bad for the environment and human health than going straight to the landfill in the first place. And even if you took out, even if you gave the industry their very crazy argument that somehow their greenhouse gas emissions are not what they actually are, pretend they're zero, the other impacts add up to more than all the impacts of landfills. And this is the heart attacks and strokes caused by particulate matter, the asthma attacks caused by the nitrogen oxides that form smog, the toxic chemicals that form birth defects and cancers. These are so impactful that there's just no way incineration is ever going to be preferable to landfills, even if they can win the global warming argument, which they cannot. And oftentimes the argument is made that if you have to transport waste hundreds of miles, that's a problem because diesel trucks are so bad. And yes, diesel trucks are bad. But this is how bad they are. The blue line compared to the emissions from landfills in that Maryland study is how much is attributable to trucking it, in some cases hundreds of miles. The black lines as if it's by rail, but we don't have rail access here. So we'd be talking about the blue lines. So that's about 3% of the total impact. So there's no distance at which you can bring trash in a truck that's going to make it worse to landfill it than to incinerate it. So the question is often, well, where's our waste going to go if we don't incinerate it? And Philadelphia City Council members have asked me the same thing. And it's kind of funny to me, having been in this for a while, because I've known for many years, for over 30 years now, that Pennsylvania has been the largest importer of trash in the country. We've imported trash from so many states. I chose to flood fill the ones that were the ones that did not send us trash. There are only 6. Every other state on this map has sent trash to Pennsylvania, and places outside the country, even like Virgin Islands, Bermuda, and Canada, also send trash to Pennsylvania facilities. We have 43 landfills and 6 incinerators, and have permitted so much extra capacity that we become a magnet for out-of-state waste. And this has been going on for decades. This is a map of the landfills in the region. So we're already sending to some of these from Philadelphia, but there are plenty of others out there. And yes, they will fill up over time, and we're not a fan of them, and we don't want to fill them up faster. But we recognize that incineration is so much worse that it's imperative that we close the incinerators and stop feeding them right away. Let the waste go to the landfills as we work on the zero waste methods as quickly as we can, and stretch out the life of these landfills. Now, another issue is the environmental racism aspect of this. Pennsylvania is a good example. If you look, this is our environmental justice analyzer. Basically, if you look at all the different distances here, if things were distributed equally in terms of where the 6 trash incinerators in Pennsylvania are located, all of these lines would follow the 1 ratio. But you can see for Black people, because of Chester and Harrisburg and how urban they are, there's a very disproportionate impact in Pennsylvania in terms of who is affected by incinerators. And we find this nationally as well, but be careful not to repeat studies like one that says 80% of incinerators are in environmental justice communities. That's incorrect. 66% are in white communities. However, if you look at the top 20 of them, or if you adjust for the population, like places like Chester that are more populated than, say, the incinerator in the middle of a rural white area in Lancaster County, you have a much greater impact because there are more people impacted. And if you look at the size of the facility and how far the pollution goes, you see even more serious impacts. Now, if you compare to landfills in Pennsylvania, landfills actually disproportionately impact white people, and the average population around them is much lower, and the median household income much higher. So in terms of environmental justice, we can't just generalize and say all bad things are in communities of color and impacting people equally. That's not the case. And this doesn't make it acceptable. I've worked with a lot of these white rural communities, and they're in bad times in a lot of them. But when it comes to how many people are impacted and how badly they're impacted, we can rest knowing that sending to a landfill is less harmful than sending to an incinerator. Even the one in my home county, I was looking at it today, and I was going to make a slide about the population within 2 miles of that landfill, but there is no population within 2 miles of that landfill. There are no people living within 2 miles. Yet, if you look at the one in Chester, you'll see thousands of people living within even 1 mile of that incinerator. So let's talk about solutions for a moment. There's a zero waste hierarchy that I developed that's now used as an international standard by the Zero Waste International Alliance and certifying bodies that also use this. And it breaks down the whole 3 R's that we know, the reduce, reuse, recycle, into additional steps. And it makes it very clear that incineration is in the unacceptable category. There's a definition of zero waste that goes along with this that's also peer reviewed and used internationally. And it makes it very clear that incineration is not part of a zero waste system. So despite what you see in Philadelphia, where they have a zero waste and litter action plan, which is not zero waste, it's zero waste in the same sense that Subaru Stadium in Chester is using it, pretending that there's zero landfill when they burn all the stuff they don't recycle and compost, and pretend the ash doesn't go to a landfill. That's the hijacking of zero waste. It is not actually zero waste. If Philadelphia's zero waste plan was actually a zero waste plan, it would say end incineration as soon as possible, not rely on it as much as you can after you reduce other waste streams. So it's definitely missed the boat on a number of levels. But if you break this down, you'll see that there are a lot of additional steps that can basically get to a point where you have a very small, stabilized residual that's going to landfills, so they won't be gassy and stinky if you do the right things. So what that basically looks like, you hit a point where you have to sort of separate. When you hit reusables, you are separating the things that still have value, putting them on free cycle or wherever you want to bring them a thrift store. And that is 5% of the waste stream, but 50% of the value of what's in trash. And then recycling, which we need to do a better job of in Philadelphia by far, composting. And then for what's in the trash cans, you want to look at it, see what's in there, see how you can fix the system to go more forward thinking and ban hard to recycle products, things that aren't designed well, get them designed better. And then you want to mechanically remove additional recyclables and digest the organic fraction that's left. And when you do those last steps, your landfill is going to be having very little left in it, and it's not going to be so gassy and stinky. This basically is the same idea here. There's a landfill in the back of the picture no matter what you do, but we don't want to burn first and send ash there. We want to do the zero waste approach and send processed residuals there once we do all the upstream things as best we can. So I have a few more minutes. I'll just explain a little bit more about what some of the solution side looks like. The most effective and cost-effective way to quickly reduce trash is called pay-as-you-throw or unit-based pricing or save-as-you-throw, lots of names for it. But it basically means you pay per bag or per bin. Right now, your neighbor can put out 10 bags of trash a week. You can put out one and you pay the same amount. It's not fair. And so when they switch to this system that over 10,000 communities are using in the US, on average, you see about a 44% reduction immediately. And about half of that is not just things going into recycle bins, but people reducing and reusing more because they're paying more attention to what they buy, which is even better. So if we do like San Francisco and lots of other places are doing, get the sizes of the bins right. So the trash one is the small one, the recycling one is the bigger one, and that the composting one even exists, which we're far from having in Philadelphia, then we can really divert a lot of waste. And one other major waste stream is the picture of the deconstruction crew here is from Baltimore. We're working in Baltimore to get a deconstruction mandate passed that would enable people to get jobs dismantling buildings instead of having wrecking balls taken to them, because construction demolition waste is one of the biggest waste streams that exists. And we can create a lot of jobs and save a lot of materials by taking apart buildings instead of demolishing them. So to wrap up, one of the other pieces of our campaign here in Philadelphia, aside from getting that bill introduced to City Council to stop incineration, we also want to make sure that our recycling system is functioning. On my block here, which this is a picture from, I've documented over the past year that they've trashed our recycling 90% of the time. I've filmed them about 40 to 50 times now, and literally 90% is getting, or times that they just mix it together. Now, I think my neighborhood is worse than other ones in general in the city, but we don't know because the city is not keeping track. They have no records, they insist, and I battled them with right to know requests. They have no record keeping on whether they even sent a recycling truck out on a route on a given day or given week, which is inexcusable. So this is a violation of state law. We're going to be turning them into the state again and getting them another notice of violation, which a year ago came with 0 fines, and the state deciding that, oh, the city is doing it right now. The problem is fixed. Well, that was a whole year ago, and the problem is definitely not fixed. So we can use their help. Anyone who lives in Philadelphia who would like to just monitor and videotape if you can, whether this is happening in your neighborhood, I need the evidence so I can prove to the state that this is not just an anomaly on my block. This is happening in other parts of the city, just maybe not as badly. So if you want to get involved, we are not going to have the registrations, or I'm not going to have them from this unless you take another step and go to this website. So please take a moment right now, drop it in the chat too, and go to phillyzerowaste.org/join. And there's a form there where you can fill out the different ways you want to plug in to this campaign, whether it's filming trash trucks or lobbying city council or just helping us spread the message throughout the city. Definitely can use our help. We're just kicking this campaign off now that we're on a good path in Delaware County, and Philadelphia is the next target to go after. So Thank you very much. I'll drop my info into the chat as well for anyone who wants to follow up with me directly. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm really hoping, I know that I've seen many times where my recycling has unfortunately been put into the trash truck, and I'm really hoping it's not at 90% of the time. But it's like so important to be able to document that. I know that one of our past sessions, we really focused on the number that you can call at the city to report that. So it's helpful to also know that we should contact you and your organization to help bring that forward as well. I also thought the focus on solutions for a zero waste strategy connected so well to the session we had last month on circular economy. So hopefully everyone can see how all of these waste related issues that we've been talking about month after month are intricately connected, and how, it's overwhelming, but we need to focus on all of these different pieces. And there is a space for, whatever your interest is or whatever your connection is to be looped in on all of this. So next, we're going to turn to our panelists, Mayfield and Eileen Flanagan. And I'm going to start with Ms. Mayfield. So residents in Chester have been dealing with the adverse impacts of pollution and environmental justice for decades. Mayfield has been a driving force behind the effort to change this through the creation of Chester Residents' Concern for Quality Living. She was featured in the 1996 documentary Laid to Waste, which walks the viewer through the crisis in Chester and the story of a waste processing facility from the viewpoints of residents, politicians, environmental activists, and other leaders. The efforts of Ms. Mayfield and so many others have highlighted the unjust practices of placing polluting facilities near low-income communities of color. Ms. Mayfield has received several awards, including the NAACP Sojourner Truth Award. And Ms. Mayfield, it is such a pleasure to have you here today, and I'd like to turn the floor over to you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here so you can hear about what we're doing well in Chester. Originally, when I got involved in this, I was just a resident. I'm still just a resident, just want to be a resident. But they were building this plant and they told us it was a trash to steam plant. And that terminology is still sticking. Now it's wasted energy, or, all these cute new green terms that they have. And now incineration is now the new green recycling, as the people at Subaru in the stadium in Chester want to call it. So we are an organization that was formed in 1992. So this is our 30th year anniversary this year that we have been in existence, sometimes more active than not, but right now we're quite active and we are on this battlefield to alleviate our city from the death of incineration. What I can tell you is that since the incinerator has been in our community, our quality of life has gone down. People's health has deteriorated. Property values have plummeted. And people feel stuck, as if they are in a prison, because they have no choice and no control over their environment and the atmosphere of how they live and what they are breathing. If you come to Chester, you will know immediately that there is something burning, because it is every day, it's an attack on your senses, on your peace of mind. But when you come, you will have some very physical things happen to you. Your eyes will burn, your throat will become dry. You are just irritated. But if you live there, that's a constant assault. I have a 89-year-old member of our group who is told that under no circumstances is she to open up any windows in her house at all. And this is a lady who's very social, loves to sit on her porch and wave at people in the community. And she cannot do that anymore for health reasons. the particulate matter and the residue and the diesel that comes off of the trucks. It covers everything, cars and the things on the inside of your house. And one of the residents said, he said, I wash my car every day. I can't keep it clean. So imagine what that is doing to my lungs. And there are no words and no answers to the type of callousness and the racism that put this thing literally on top of us. When I say literally, it's literally on top of us. And it appears that, everybody profits, everybody has a decision to make in reference to placing and having these things in the community, everybody but the people who actually live in the community. However, we're not going anywhere because it is our community. And right now, we're just in a fight for the survival of a way of life for people's lives and to give our children a chance to even grow up and breathe. So there are some real things that you all can do. Help us, join us. We build bridges, we encourage allies, and we need to broaden our base. People united shall never be defeated. And as long as we're fighting this thing, we have not been defeated. We will not give up this quest to shut that thing down. And I believe wholeheartedly in my soul that we will shut it down. It's no one magic bullet to it. They don't care about the health statistics. They don't care about the science of it. They don't care what pollutants are coming out of it. This is clearly a pollution for profits scenario. But we can change that as people. We can change that tide and that mindset. And that is what is happening. No one group should have to suffer the way the people in Chester have suffered for everybody else's comfort. We are one city in a county of 49. We're the poorest city in that county. Yet we get all of their trash. We get we get Philadelphia's trash. We get New York's trash, Maryland's trash. And Mike just explained to you literally from everywhere in this country, including Puerto Rico, we've received their trash. And it's an unfair situation, but we can balance the power. We can balance it. The more people that are raising this issue, the next drive is to make Philadelphia stop sending their garbage to Chester. There are other alternatives. I don't see any incinerators in the city of Philadelphia. Now, whether that's a written law or an underlying notion, that's just not what they want to do. Yet they see fit to send it to Chester. I talked to Kenny when he was a councilman, begged and pleaded with him. In the 90s, please stop this practice. Help us defeat this. Okay, but it's all not doom and gloom. We are giving them hell on many different aspects. We're trying to change the political tide here so that we don't have to fight these things on the back end once they're here and running. If we get qualified and competent people in certain offices who will lock arms with us, we can defeat them prior to them even being built. Right now, our local government, the mayor is literally the cheerleader or spokesperson for Covanta. Literally. He claims that there is nobody in Chester he knows that is suffering from breathing issues. No one. So, but he will be defeated. He's going to go down next year. We just knocked his nephew off of state rep, so we're going after his seat too. We're going to end his 40-year reign of terror. But we're asking you to get involved with us. You can come to our bi-weekly meetings. I'm going to put this in the chat. I'm going to try to anyway. How you can contact us. You can contact me here. Yeah, I'm slow. I type slow on the laptop. But anyway, we're doing fine. But we can use your help, particularly with this campaign to get Philadelphia to stop sending their trash there. Then we'll work on the other ones. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mayfield. We really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about that and to tell us just about your personal experience with all of this. I know one of the things that really kind of frustrates me is that, you know, one of the things that you highlighted is that recycling, when we all hear about it, we think it's such a great thing. And yet, you know, the more that I've looked into this, the more I've realized that recycling can include a lot of different things. And one of those is often nowadays incineration. And so we're being told that things are being recycled when in fact they're being incinerated. And I think it is up to all of us.
Oh, that is the big fat lie. That is the big fat lie. You know, we try to teach our kids to be good stewards of the earth and put the proper things in the proper bins, but it's all for naught if it all goes on the same truck and it's all burned the same way. We've watched it many times. In addition to them burning trash, they burn drugs in our community in that incinerator. They burn medicines. So we have no idea on a daily basis what we are exposed to. We have no idea.
No, and it is, I mean, it's astounding to see, you know, Mike, the map that you highlighted, you know, all of those places around the country where this trash is coming in from and, you know, going to Chester, and yet the residents of Chester are having to fight to have any say in this process. You know, and I'm really thankful that we have people like the both of you, you know, kind of leading this effort, but we would like to encourage everyone on this call to connect these efforts through the links that, you know, that we've that have been provided for in the chat. And, you know, before we continue and go to any more Q&A or any of that, I really want to take some time to introduce our other panelist, Eileen Flanagan. Eileen is an award-winning author and the interim campaign director and former board clerk of EQUET. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, so I apologize, but it's the Earth Quaker Action Team. And this is a grassroots nonviolent action group, including Quakers and people of diverse beliefs who join with millions of other people around the world fighting for a just and sustainable economy. Eileen became the training coordinator of Choosing Democracy, which trained nearly 10,000 people in nonviolent strategies to prevent a coup. I'd say that's a pretty important topic. Her online courses focus on helping people make their activism more effective and how to build a spiritually grounded and effective climate justice movement. Eileen's next book is going to be focused on the intersections of racial justice and environmental justice. Eileen, I would love to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kim. I want to start by acknowledging that I'm the latecomer to this incineration issue. That I've been working on climate change for about 10 years and increasingly understanding how inextricably what's causing climate change is intertwined with environmental injustice in general and environmental racism in particular. But the role of incineration was something that I didn't understand that much until recently when Equate started a new campaign. And just to back up a second, Earth Quaker Action Team was founded by Philadelphia Quakers, but as Kim said, it includes a lot of different people now. We were founded particularly to use nonviolent direct action to work for a just and sustainable economy. So broader than climate change, but with climate change being one of the kind of inciting issues for us. And nonviolent direct action, meaning that we use more challenging strategies than just phoning our representatives or voting or recycling or that kind of thing. And in general, we've gone after corporations. This last year, we were invited into a global campaign against Vanguard, the asset manager who many of you may have heard of or even do business with. Vanguard's the second biggest asset manager in the world with over $8 trillion under management. And they're one of the biggest investors in companies causing climate change. And because they're based in southeastern Pennsylvania, we were invited to take on the direct action part of that campaign. Well, very quickly we thought, well, like, who are companies in our region that Vanguard's invested in that are bad for climate change or bad for environmental justice issues? And there were lots of places, it must be said, but Chester really stood out. The incinerator, Covanta, as Mike mentioned, the name of the company, used to be that Vanguard was one of the top investors. The company was bought by another company, so now it's a smaller percentage, but they're still an investor and they have a legacy effect from many years of investing. But if you look along that stretch of the Delaware River, we heard about the Trainer oil refinery, which is very close. There's a chemical corporation, Kimberly Morgan. Up the road is Boeing and another generating station. And all of these have major, like Vanguard is one of the major investors in those companies. So we see this really clear pattern of people making money off of these polluting systems. And the people making the most money are not the people living with the most direct effects. I would argue, and I've heard both Zuline and Mike say this too, that the effects of something like incineration actually spread. It's not only people in Chester breathing really toxic air, but it is most concentrated there. It is most obvious. The health effects are clearest and most deadly. But we are all connected to it in various ways, whether it is our trash going into the incineration, whether it's an impact on our own breathing. Like my kid had asthma and I didn't know how polluted the region was until she was diagnosed and the nurse at CHOP said, oh, it's probably pollution, or this money connection. So that's the angle that Equate is focusing on, is that this whole system, what's happening in Chester is a microcosm of a bigger system that's really about profit, that is deeply connected with the callousness that Zuline mentioned. There's racism, there's classism, there's just general indifference. And it's deeply tied to this profit motive and a mindset that says, well, we're investing money, we're making money. It's not our job to be concerned with how that money is made. And so Equate, realizing this direct connection with environmental racism in our region, decided to have a 5-day walk to Vanguard headquarters. And we started in Chester and felt very graciously welcomed by Zuline and Circle and Energy Justice Network, who's been working on this issue a long time to start to connect the dots more with the money and the profit. So we walked from Chester through a variety of neighborhoods and arrived in Malvern, where we did civil disobedience at the end in Vanguard's driveway and talked about what we had seen on the route and tried to like physically make that connection between the sites of destruction and the sites of profit. And I think that's the last thing that I'll share is one of the things I've learned doing this work with Equate is that when you look historically at social change, there are people playing different roles and that all of those roles are important. There was one study or one researcher who found basically 4 roles of social change showing up again and again. And I think this panel is kind of an interesting example of it. The 4 roles are called the helper, the advocate, the organizer, and the rebel. So the helper is someone who tries to make change by doing things that don't take on the system. Like, what can I just do over in my lane? So for an individual, that might mean shopping at Weaver's Way Co-op, which is one of the co-sponsors tonight, where things are less likely to come wrapped in plastic than at some other stores. But hopefully you're doing it more on a group level. Maybe you're getting your kids' school to compost the lunch leftovers, or maybe you're getting your faith community to stop using disposable, cups and bottles and things like that on Sunday brunch. There's lots of things we can do to reduce waste in our own community without taking on the system. I think Mike is a great example of an advocate, using the tools of the system to try and impact the system. So lobbying, doing research, having lots of facts under your fingertips, writing op-eds, things like that to try and make a difference, understanding how these contracts work and things like that. The third role is the organizer, and Zuline is a fabulous organizer. She talked about building ally relationships. Organizers are focused on bringing people in, bringing people together, amplifying their voices. And then Equate is playing the rebel role. And so the rebels like to challenge the system and shake things up. So if y'all ever decide to block the trash trucks, we'll try and help in other ways. We'll show up to the hearing. But if your town should block the trash trucks, that's the kind of role that Equate might be especially skilled at playing, although we can all play different roles at different times. So I wanted to share that just as people are listening to this, I have the sense from the comments that people are really moved and want to get involved, that to really make a systemic change, people need to be kind of working on all of those levels. And on a spiritual level, I would say countering that callousness that Zuline talked about, and that indifference and that sense of disconnection that is encouraged by business as usual. I think I'll pause there so we can get to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Eileen. That was incredibly helpful and helped kind of tie some things together. I really liked that notion of the 4 lanes. And I think just how we all see ourselves fitting into those and maybe moving between those to have a bigger impact. But I really liked how you ended that by saying, at least the way I took it was that we need people in all of those lanes. And I think what's great is you kind of connecting each person on this call to one of those different lanes. So that was really helpful. And I think that leads to kind of one of the questions is, for each of you, kind of how do you see, for people that do want to get involved, can you list some of those ways? You mentioned standing in front of trash trucks. So maybe that's one of those for your organization, but I would love to, maybe you want to start and say what some of those other examples are, and then maybe we can move to each person and just say, what are some of those ways to get involved?
Yeah, sure. So I've dropped our link in as well if people want to get on our newsletter. Because we're targeting Vanguard, we're really pushing Vanguard's global policy around climate change. They signed a pledge saying that they're going to do all this stuff. They've issued statements saying they're going to do all this stuff. They're terrible. They're really behind the other asset managers. So we're going to be showing up sometimes at Vanguard headquarters, but also at other places around the region where they're invested. On June 1st, we're going to Comcast because Comcast employees, Vanguard investments are the default. And there's a shareholder resolution that day about that. But we want to keep bringing it back to the fact that people are hurt by these investments now. And the incinerator in Chester is one example of it. And so we want to use this campaign whenever we talk about Vanguard to make that connection for people, if we're talking to the press or at an action. So there are a lot of different tactics we could use. Not all of them will get you in big trouble. But what was the other thing I was going to say about rebel action? I think part of what is an advantage of it is it gives people a sense of urgency. This isn't just another issue. People are dying. And the last time I was in Chester, there was a speaker talking about someone in the community who had just passed, and the connection to pollution. And people sometimes it's like, oh, one more thing to write a letter about. But I think part of the power of direct action is helping people understand that these issues are life and death, whether it's climate change or the immediate effects of all kinds of pollution. Oh, so that's what I was going to say. Sorry. So one of the things we are going to encourage people to call Vanguard, even if they're not able to come to actions in person. Mention Chester, mention the incinerator, mention like a specific example of why you're upset about their investment policies. I appreciated Mike really challenging the focus only on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are not the only thing causing climate change or pollution. And so we're definitely thinking about how to weave that into the way we talk about things, and we'll encourage other people to do that too, as well as showing up when we can, if other roles are are doing something that we can be helpful with.
And Ms. Mayfield, I know that, over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of action around showing up to meetings, and just getting people out there to show that people care. Are there, is that one of the main ways that you would encourage people to get involved, or are there other ways that folks on the call can be most helpful?
Well, one, they can come to our website at chesterresidents.org. We constantly are in need of social media people, action people, help with our communications. And there are different groups that are designated to work on those different areas, whether it be, an action item that we have, for example, the last major action we didn't actually do it. One of our groups called Campus Coalition Concerning Chester, C4, had a protest at Subaru headquarters in Camden. And people could have joined us there. We went over and the students were there, and it was a great day. We magnified the issue. But most importantly, they can come onto our calls. They can reach me directly I'll put the link in the chat. And just to find out what we're doing at that particular moment. Right now we have a campaign going on to get another person on our solid waste authority, but that's a local Delco issue, but everybody's reach is far. It's nothing wrong. We have a newly formed health board at Delaware County, and one of the priority issues should be the incinerator in the city of Chester. That should not be we'll look at it in a year. No, that's the primary health problem in the city and for the county. And that needs to be magnified. And the more people that question and have Chester coming out of their mouth in different segments in life, it heightens and it broadens people's awareness that people are looking at this. We all are breathing the same air. It doesn't stop at Chester. It doesn't stop at Philly. It don't stop in Camden. It's all one mixture in this region for us. And we are all impacted by it. But one of the main things that you can do is come there and join us, and let's see where we can put you in wherever your talents are. Wherever your talents are, you would be surprised the amount of help that we get. With just videography and pictures and people being able to do this or that, and could fill in some of the gaps that we have, the deficiencies that we have. But that's the first point of contact. And from there, depending upon what actions we have that are going on, that's where you can be most impactful. The Philadelphia people are going to be extremely, extremely helpful in beating back Philadelphia Council and Mayor from signing another contract with Covanta. And we can start now.
That's really helpful.
Highlighting it and bringing it forward and letting them know that, hey, this is an issue for us.
No, that's great. And I think, realizing that there are various needs and people can plug in different ways. And Mike, I'm
Absolutely.
assuming similarly, on your end, there may be different ways that folks can plug in. Are there specific things that you all are looking for or actions that you typically take?
Yeah, so we're just getting our Philadelphia campaign started, as I was saying, and part of that is getting up to kindergarten level of a sane waste management system, like not dumping recycling in the trash truck. Like that's just, we should have been there ages ago, and we can't even get them to be honest about how much they're doing that, or even to know how much they're doing that. So we need everyone in Philadelphia's help in documenting this problem, because they're not documenting them themselves. And that will help us get the reporting to the state and get this system at least doing the very basic fundamental service that we're supposed to get. And then as we draw attention to that and get city council members thinking, gee, maybe we should have a hearing about our streets department, how it's not functioning properly and how they don't collect the data they should and don't do the things with the trucks that they should, then we can also enter that conversation, be like, well, where are those trucks taking the trash? And what are you going to do to get this bill introduced already and get it passed so that we can cut it off next year? And if not then the year after that. But we're going to keep fighting until we get that bill passed and get these contracts stopped. And maybe it's not going to happen until we get a new mayor. We're going to have to get some new leadership, because the biggest long-term problem in Philadelphia is that, in terms of our solid waste, is that we've had people who don't care running our streets department. We've had a dysfunctional, pathetic recycling system for decades, because we have the wrong people running it, and we don't have a mayor who cares to put the right people in charge of that department. So that's crucial, but we can't do it without you. So I'm going to drop this link in again. I just set up this Google form, and I hope you all use it, because it'll enable us to stay in touch. So just take a minute, go there and plug in your stuff. You can check off which ways you want to help right at the top, and then we can follow up with you afterwards.
No, that's great. And I think highlighting just, we all have the ability to impact this, even through voting, and hopefully, everyone got a chance to do that this past week. But there are, more elections coming up down the road, and they're going to really matter to this issue and so many others that are related. And so really trying to understand all of the pieces, as we think about future elections. And Mike, in terms of, I know you were mentioning the different pieces of data, that we need. One of the questions that the audience asked was, how much do we have in terms of statistics related to health conditions, that residents have been kind of feeling in Chester and in other places? How much data do we have that we can use in this space?
Sure. So it's really hard to have a study that says this incinerator is causing harm to these people here, especially in a place like Chester, where there's a sewage sludge incinerator a block away, an oil refinery down the street, and just such a cluster of other polluters, that any study is going to throw up their hands and be like, well, we can't prove who did what, but we know collectively that the pollutants coming out of these things are harmful to people's health, and that there's a health problem in Chester, and there's a health problem in the whole Philly area. So we know enough, and it's common sense to say, okay, there's data showing there's nasty stuff coming out of the smokestacks. The data is not good enough, but we have a general idea of what's coming out. And there's also not good enough data on what chemicals cause what, but there's enough data to say, yeah, it's bad. And there's enough data to say there's a problem. And the science is not going to be there to make that perfectly link all up and be like, Cabanta's molecule gave this person cancer. The science isn't there for that, but it doesn't need to be there, because we have enough common sense and enough studies that have shown us the circumstantial evidence that we know that there's a problem. So I'm going to drop in the link again to our incineration page. There's a fact sheet that Cabanta put out saying all the health studies show there's no problem from incinerators. And I went through that, debunked it, and wrote my own fact sheet on the health studies and documented how there are health studies that show elevated cancers. They're mostly out of Europe, but cancers and respiratory problems primarily are found in communities around incinerators.
Listen, this is not a fight that you're going to win with health data. They know what the health effects are. They know what is happening in Chester. They know that people are dying. They know that the overall statistic is that anybody that lives near an incinerator, their life longevity is cut anywhere from 5 to 15 years. Okay? They know these things because these are their statistics. So it's no one thing that is going to, this is a political fight. This is a fight about people. It's got to be people over profits over pollution. Okay? It is a political thing. These are all fights encapsulated in one. So we have to fight them we got to meet them on all of the fields. But we're never going to beat them with health data. We'll never beat them scientifically because they can outgun us, outpay whatever scientists or academia they want to come up with virtually any study they want. But we are not stupid. Common sense will tell you if you continually place hazards upon hazards upon hazards on a population whose health is already not that great, you're not increasing their quality of life, you're diminishing it. So we have to hold them accountable. If they viewed people in Chester as being powerless, then the people in Chester have to broaden their area of power, such as collaborating with Equate and other groups. This is about power building, holding these politicians and the polluters accountable. Because the politicians will write any damn legislation they want to lower the standards. That's why we're all suffering. So but it can be done. It can be done. Nothing man ever made has lasted forever. When we started this, we didn't start it. They started the fight. Shit, they just messed with us. Excuse me, but I do cuss. You know, when in the early 90s, we were fighting. In one year, we had four permit applications that we were fighting at one time. At one time. Head Circle never been formed. I can't even tell you what that region, that 5 miles, because that's all Chester is, it's 5 miles, would have looked like. They were going to burn animals in our city, the largest pet crematory in the nation, right there in that city. There were 3 proposals to burn tires. One proposal or one plan to burn contaminated soil. We had the largest autoclave of infectious medical waste there. We had to fight them. But I can tell you this, all of those other things, they are no longer in Chester because they were defeated. Either we defeated them, or they folded up and said, no mas, we can't take it anymore. So we, as a community, we're not going to go anywhere until this thing is dead.
Sorry, I had one question. Eileen, feel free to jump in and then I'll ask my question.
Well, I just really especially want to reiterate this issue about people coming together and highlight the role of divide and conquer in these struggles. So Kim mentioned that I've been working on a book on these issues, which has kind of gotten a pause because I took the job working on Vanguard. But it turns out that the places around the country that I was researching all have Vanguard as a major investor, including Cancer Alley, Louisiana, which Kim had mentioned. But one of the things that comes up again and again is the way that industry tries to divide communities, even within communities, you know, giving a grant to someone or, you know, downplaying some part of the community. But there's some research that shows that the sites that are chosen are not the 99% Black community. It's the community that is a little bit mixed, or that is maybe majority Black, but with a high immigrant population. Or sometimes it's the neighborhood that is right on a county line, or where the working class white neighborhood is right next to a community of color. That I think in recent years, more people have gotten educated about this issue of environmental racism. But racism, I think, has 2 main ways that it functions. One is to devalue the lives of people of color, BIPOC, Black and brown, whatever terminology you prefer. But the other is the divide and conquer role that it plays, so that people don't see their fate as connected to this other community or don't organize together. And so it's something I really appreciate about the Chester campaign and watching Eileen, you organize with the Swarthmore students so effectively, is a great example of how people can counter that, but that it takes extra work to get over the way, you know, racial segregation is part of what led to this to begin with, right? And how that supports industry sticking with business as usual.
Listen, I'm going to tell you this. We have more in common than we do that we have issues that separate us. As I said, all of the nasties don't remain in Chester. So it is to everybody's benefit. Everybody's benefit. You know, our fight in Chester is your fight. Baltimore's fight is our fight. Harrisburg's fight is our fight. Newark's fight is our fight. We all are fighting to breathe. To breathe. We just want the God-given right to frickin' be able to breathe. God gave us that right, and no man should have the ability to take that away from us. No man. So, in keeping with, you know, one philosophy, am I my brother's keeper? Absolutely, you are. How do you extol power on people who are viewed as being powerless? You join them. You join them. And where they don't know have the know-how, you teach them. But you can believe me, it's a two-way street. And we have got to come together. Those of us that care have got to come together. All this foolishness, well, I only care about climate change. I really don't care about environmental justice. That blows my mind. Let's stop with these cute little titles. Every couple of years, it's a new terminology. We all have to fight to save the only place we have to live.
No, it's so true. And, you know, amazingly, you both started answering the question I was going to ask anyway. So, you know, which was basically, you know, like you all have like worked in this space, you know, for quite some time. And while the struggle continues and the fight continues, you have seen times where there has been positive, you know, movement. And so I was really interested in, you know, what are those things that have worked, right? Like what has gotten through? And Mike, I know that, you know, through your organization, you've been able to kind of put forward some legislation, you know, in various places. And so, you know, what was it that kind of allowed that to move forward? And are those pieces that we're able to kind of take forward?
Kim, you're not hearing what I'm saying. There's no one magic silver bullet.
Oh, yes.
It takes all of these things, and it's going to take all of us, despite the fact that we didn't have shit to do with putting it there.
Yeah.
It's going to take all of us to get it out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are all kinds of, sorry.
It's all a collective effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are tons of victories against this industry in particular. They've been trying since 1995 to build hundreds of new incinerators around the country. And how many did they get built at new locations? Zero. They got one built next to an existing one in Florida, and that was it in 27 years. So this is because of work we have done, work with others in our movement have done, one community at a time, to kick the crap out of this industry. And we've been extremely successful, more than any industry I can name. One of the recent victories about a little over a year ago was in Camden. Cavanta's there, and they're the largest air polluter in all of Camden County. And they tried to build a microgrid that was going to be powered by Cavanta. And we recognized that as a way of monetizing Cavanta to make them last longer instead of shutting down because they're not economically viable. And within 10 months of, we haven't even met face to face, most of the people I worked with, it was all Zoom meetings during the pandemic. And we showed up at public meetings on Zoom, raised hell all the time. And within 10 months, that microgrid went from being powered by a trash incinerator to being powered by solar, digester gas, and batteries, which was an amazing victory. Now they're back at it trying to burn liquid industrial waste, which is their newest effort to monetize. We're going to kick them again and stop that again. But in Delaware County, God, we've gotten the best team of zero waste consultants to be the ones consulting for the county to write their 10-year solid waste management plan and transition away from incineration. I know because I wrote the RFP, parts of it, to make sure, and it chased away all the normal consultants, and the zero waste ones got the contract. We also are on about 2 weeks away from taking a majority over the solid waste authority that the county has, so that we'll have 4 out of 7 seats that are opposed to incineration, which will be historic. So we definitely, just within a year and a half's time, have made huge title shifts in Delaware County. They're going to end their use of incineration.
No, that's helpful, and completely agree that there is no one answer to any of this. Although maybe part of the answer is what you're saying. Kind of breaking down division and people coming together to fight this. To fight this together, and so really encouraging everyone to realize much as
froze.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And I know that Mike, and you would answer this, I think, in the chat. Someone had asked if other cities had banned incinerators already. I don't know if you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I have to. I should have pulled up a file so I can answer.
That's fine.
But there are some whole states that have. West Virginia as a whole state has. Rhode Island has. Delaware has. Some of the various cities have, but I don't know them off the top of my head. But yeah, we've had strong movements against this industry, and it's driven things into law. We got Baltimore to pass the Baltimore Clean Air Act, which would have forced the closure of their incinerator if not for the courts screwing us up and a corrupt mayor. So we're still battling that one. But we got them to have to invest $40 million in pollution controls that they would not have done at all if not for us fighting them at that level and getting that political support. So there's just been a strong resistance movement on this, and we've had a lot of victories.
That's great. And then somebody else asked a question. I'm not sure that I'm getting this totally right. To ask, how come the maturity of the waste management is rarely discussed when evaluating the effectiveness of, waste management policies or programs? So I don't know if any of you wants to jump in on that.
I'm not sure I understood the question. I don't see it in the chat. So could you rephrase that maybe?
So if the person that asked it wants to kind of reframe, feel free to reframe that in the chat, and we can make sure to get to that. I think kind of in the meantime, I think one of the other questions is just, are there folks kind of in the city or in the counties, kind of at leadership levels that have been supportive of these efforts is one thing I'm wondering, as we talk about the many people that have stood in the way, who are those champions? We obviously know the three of you are doing, really important work. Who are those that are standing by you?
Oh, we have our allies, particularly on Delaware County Council. Unfortunately, we don't have an ally on our own city council, but we changing that shit. That's about to be a done deal. We will have an ally there. We will have an ally in the state rep. Surprisingly, we have some allies, Philadelphia state reps that are in agreement with us. But but took a sideline because they're waiting for our state rep to initiate and write bills, which he never did. He was missing in action. He just recently said that the only thing that was coming out of the stack of Covanta was steam. It was steam. That's why his ass is no longer going to be the state rep, partially. So goodbye, Mr. Kirkland. But there are allies. Listen, we have a lot of allies, a lot of community groups like this one. Sadly, though, and we got to put it out there, the traditional environmental groups, they don't come to places like Chester. They are not our champions, and they don't, they've been really, really, really late to the party. okay? Which is not, it's not a fair situation to say that you're an environmentalist, yet you don't care about a community like Chester. And I always say, I have no respect. I like animals, don't get me wrong, but I have no respect for a group who values an owl over a child. You know, I have no respect for a group, you know, whose budget is millions, and they won't put boots on the ground in a place like Chester or Camden or Baltimore, you know, yet they'll want to come in and prostitute the work that you have done and use your name for a grant and take away much needed funding for groups like mine. We've worked on next to nothing but determination and survivalism, but it's okay because the fight is in us. But look at what we could have accomplished had we had that supporting help from those larger groups who've been at this a lot longer than we have, who had access to technical and support information and technology that we did not have. When we started this, there were very, very few people that came to our assist us. Namely, they were students. When I met Mike, Mike was a student in State College. I didn't meet him, he sought me out. And we learned a lot from him. We learned a lot from academia. We learned a lot from the commitment of students that we have. They had access to things that books we would never be able to get and to understand and break down the science for us. I mean, we got it now, but had we had the support of the traditional environmental groups who thought that it was not politically advisable for them to get involved in an environmental racism thing. So, but now all of them are putting in grants and grant proposals and putting on their websites, we're about environmental justice. You liars. You lie. I can't tell you the number of groups that has never been to Chester, all within the Philadelphia area, all being funded because they are active in communities. The lies that they have told.
So maybe for those that are on the call, not just getting involved, but for those that are part of other organizations to really think about how to connect.
Yes, and if you're part of those organizations, ask them. What have you done with this issue in Chester? Because they've been missing on the battlefield. I'm telling you that right now.
Yeah,
but our arms are open. Our arms are open if they come with the capacity to help and to not use.
And I think the environmental community, you know, there are a lot of people doing, you know, work that they care about a lot. And, you know, we all do better if we come together. I think, Eileen, as you were saying, you know, really bringing those people together and really
the forces have to come together.
Yes.
It's no other way that we get. Listen, the corporations have conferences even when they hate each other. They're competing industries, but they managed to have these think tanks. They managed to come up with these clever little terminologies so that they can outmaneuver us. They've taken over the green word from those environmental groups. They've taken over Earth Day. That's why we don't celebrate it in Chester. We have Environmental Justice Day. Every dirty, rotten, stinking company polluting, whatever, has Earth Day activities. Mm-hmm. At the same time that they're poisoning people. It's such a contradictory thing.
No,
so, but if you guys are a part of these traditional environmental groups, call them out on their bullshit. I mean, call them out. You're right in this region where you got the largest incinerator in the country, in the poorest city in Delaware County, probably one of the poorest cities in the state. And it's the oldest state in the country. Show Chester a little bit of respect for what we're carrying on our backs for everybody else's comfort. So that's all I got to say about that.
No, and that is, I mean, thank you. Thank you for carrying that, unfortunately carrying that, but also for rallying people to the cause and to really bringing that to the forefront, because I think we all need to know that we all have a part to play in this and that we are all already part of it. And I wanted to just kind of end, asking each of you, if you just had any final thoughts to share with the group, how you feel like, your work, connects to the people on this call, or, how you all kind of connect to each other, and how we bring this work forward. Any thoughts that you might have to share. And then, we'd love to kind of give you that floor, give you a few more minutes. Eileen, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, as I said, we're thinking in the Vanguard campaign how to continually put pressure on this particular company, but do it in a way that supports like this local campaign in particular, but highlights those things. So we're open to hearing like when is either Zuline or Mike organizing something, that we can show up to. And we have a lot of members in Delaware County and a lot in Philadelphia. So there might be different people at different times, but also using our own kind of network and talking to the press, like making the connections between these issues. The one other thing that I want to say, Mike was rattling off kind of some of the successes. And I really want to underscore that after I joined Equate, I started noticing that on all these TV shows, I watch a little too much embarrassing TV. Whenever activists show up, they're always like crazy loners who want to like blow something up, or like they never, like even the West Wing, after Trump was elected, like all these people started watching the West Wing again. Like never do they show that the law was actually passed because of people like Zuline and Mike, like banging on the door for decades. The media doesn't tell us that story nearly enough. And especially, Kim, you mentioned like our political context is kind of grim, right? It's really important that we keep reminding each other and ourselves that small groups of people do make a difference every day. We just don't hear those stories enough. Like we have to, in addition to talking about the incinerators that were built, we have to remember about all the incinerators that weren't built because people opposed them. And most people don't know that story. And I think just in this political moment in particular, it's important to remember it's not all up to Joe Manchin or whoever. It's up to us.
I know I need to remember that all the time. So thank you for reminding us all of that. And I don't know, Mike, if you have any other thoughts. That was such a great notion right there. So if you would like to add anything else.
Yeah, let me build on some of that. So yeah, the political environment at the national level is grim, and Harrisburg at the state level is grim. At the county and local level, though, my God, that's where we win almost everything. Almost all the wins that we have are done not because a state permitting agency or the EPA steps in and does things. It happens because people took over their borough council or spoke up with their city council or their county council, zoning boards, all these local things, the sleepy elections that don't get all the fame and attention. That's where we're winning things because we can take them over, because that's where people power is the strongest. And Zuline pointed out that, you're not going to win on just facts. And yes, I beat them a lot on facts, but the thing is, there's no truth court. And if there was, we beat them a lot more often. It's not like, oh, you're right. Okay, you win. Now they shut down. Like, it's still, you have to use the facts and the information and the motivation to get the people, and you beat the money power with the people power. So the information is helpful, but it still is a political process and political stuff. It's money and politics that brought it in. That's money in politics, that people power in politics that brings it out. Just like that recent election win just in Chester a couple of days ago. So I don't know how many people here are in Montgomery County or other parts that aren't Philly or Delaware County. So I just want to point out, especially if you haven't gone to that little forum and say, I want to plug in. We need folks out in Montgomery and Bucks as well, because a lot of the contracts that are feeding this are in those counties, especially in Montgomery County, but a lot of them are also in Bucks, and they're feeding the incinerator in Plymouth, which is very close to Philadelphia, a very big polluter, worst one in Montgomery County, and like hitting the richest part of Philly. They just don't know it. So there are like 40 different contracts that we have to beat up one at a time, not like Delaware County is one big one and Philly's one big one. So if anyone's in any of these parts, be in touch, because we need to know what municipality you're in so we can work with you at that local level, because that's how we have to win this fight.
That's great. No, and it looks like you've got a couple takers in the chat, so that's helpful to know. Ms. Mayfield, do you have anything else you would like to add before we try to close out?
Well, listen, I always tell people, don't feel sorry for the people that live in Chester. Don't, because we don't feel sorry for ourselves. We are resilient, we are fighters, and we are giving them hell. Okay? I have a mayor right now. He's probably ready to go jump off the Commodore Barry Bridge. Lord, please help him not to do it. But, yes, it's a political fight. Yes, it's a fight about money and power and position. And in 30 years, we've known it from the beginning, and in 30 years, we've still rediscovered it. But the added piece that we have rediscovered in Chester is that we can change that. There's nothing under the sun that we cannot change. So if you have a government that's not responsive to you, he can be removed. We just proved it. So we, once again, do not think that this problem is so big and so overwhelming and so huge that it, oh my God, it's there, it's been there for 30 years. Let's make sure the shit's not here for 31 more years. Okay? So that's what we can do. And every day that I wake up, well, some days I don't feel like getting up. However, that is my desire, my goal. I don't want to get up and have to do this. This is not a battle that you pick up, say, oh, what would I like to get into this day or this year? I'm concerned about this. No, this battle for us as the people that live in Chester and communities that are suffering under these type of things, it's a battle of survival, not of comfort. And we're asking the people who can choose, those that are sitting in positions of comfort, to choose to get on the battlefield with us, lock arms. I've met people that ordinarily I don't think I would have ever met, such as Eileen. When Eileen called and said, oh, well, we're going to do a campaign at Vanguard, our community doesn't know about Vanguard. I knew about it because I had money that sat at Vanguard at one time. But we were able to make the connection on why it was important for us to collaborate, for us to expand their power and for them to give us some of their power. Now we're kindred spirits. When Eileen's got something to go, we may or may not show up, but we'll damn sure try. I know that Equate will show up whatever circle's doing.
No,
and that is the type of support that we need.
That's incredibly helpful. And I hope that everyone on the call tonight feels inspired and really responsible and, just part of this fight. And so I encourage everyone to get involved. I know that a lot of links have been dropped into the chat. So please sign up, reach out for more information. Let's all be in this together. And thank you all so much. The three of you, have really just highlighted the need for more focus on these issues and the need for more action. So I really appreciate you all being here tonight and taking time out to walk us all through this. Before we leave this evening, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us on another session of Philly Talks Trash. And I also wanted to encourage you all to join us next month on June 16th. We will be focusing on the topic of managing food waste at home. And we are excited to be featuring cookbook writer and blogger Anne-Marie Bonneau. If those of you in this space don't know, she is fairly well known as the Zero Waste Chef. and local business owners, Max Hosey of Hoser's Central Kitchen in the market at the Fairway, and Colleen Faliki, founder of Back to Earth Composting, will also be joining us. So we invite you all to sign up and come join us at that point. Thank you all. We've also listed the information here to connect with PRTF or PNN, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.